Hello everyone, how are you going? And welcome to something that is very highly requested, and that is the Canadian or Canada vignettes. And this is starting out with Log Driver Waltz. Jeez, 1939. Classic.
If you ask any girl from the parish around what pleases her most from her head to her toes, she'll say, I'm not sure that it's business of yours, but I do like to waltz with a log driver, for he goes burning down and down white water. That's where the log driver learns to step lightly. It's burning down and down white water. The log driver's waltz pleases girls completely. When the drive's nearly over, I like to go down and watch all the lads as they work on the river. I know that come evening they'll be in the town, and we all like to waltz with the log driver, for he goes burning down and down white water. That's where the log driver learns to step lightly. It's burning down and down white water. The log driver's waltz pleases girls completely.
Wow. Well, I just want to pause it there just to have a moment to digest what is going on here, because especially considering it was from 1939 and it started out just having the original footage, I didn't expect that, because from what I've heard and what I've seen and what the thumbnail showed, it was animated, so that took me by surprise. But then that perfect transition, I'm honestly wondering, or it feels as though this would have been made not in 1939, more like the 1979 or something like that, to be able to do this. But either way, the entire thing is so impressive, from the skill and the balance of the people to the animation style, everything about it. It's just such a, I can only imagine, lost art. However, before I forget about it, I want to talk about the fact that he's animated by having spikes on the soles of his feet, and so I'm wondering, I mean, he's got 3 legs there, so no wonder the girls like it, but no, the fact that he has spikes on the soles of his feet, but then from what I saw at the start, they definitely didn't seem to be having any sort of grip, let alone spikes on the bottom of their soles. I mean, I guess I didn't really see the bottom of their soles, but they were running around, and it looked like it was just leather-soled shoes. Well, there we go. I managed to grab the perfect frame, and yeah, there is definitely no spikes in the bottom of those shoes, and look, it would make sense just to try and grip into that wet, slippery bark, almost as though, I mean, like ice shoes, almost some crampons, but nope, not for these guys. They are too talented for that. They just run around all day, balancing on these wet, slippery logs, and then, like they said, ride them all the way down. And the fact that they called it a log driver, that's also quite interesting to me. Not a log rider or a conductor or anything like that. No, you drive that log down the river. And I mean, speaking of skill, I also do have to give it to these guys, just carrying the plates down the river while they're dancing around on the logs. I mean, even this guy, I mean, look at his face right there. He goes, what? These guys are doing what? I'm just having to carry this log down or drive this log down the river. But they're just also dancing while also stacking plates, of which it looks as though he's a little bit threatened by, considering he goes and just steals this pole out of these 2 guys' hands. Which I can only imagine, if that did happen to you, you would have been, well, fairly stranded, having no ability to really steer this log just going down the Whitewater Rapids. Good luck to you, man. Really, I can only imagine what happened quite often, and to lose your pole would have been, well, maybe quite literally a death sentence.
To please both my parents, I've had to give way and dance with the doctors and merchants and lawyers. Their manners are fine, but their feet are of clay, for there's none with the style of my log driver, for he goes burning down and down white water. That's where the log driver learns to step lightly. It's burning down and down white water. A log driver's waltz pleases girls completely. Now I've had my chances with all sorts of men, but none is so fine as my lad on the river. So when the drive's over, if he asks me again, I think I will marry my log driver.
I can only imagine the entire thing is just summed up as a good, hard day's work. An honest man. They can obviously dance well and has plenty of balance. Like they said, they doctors and lawyers, they could never stand up to the balance of a log, and that is completely fine because the amount of balance and skill and technique that it would have taken just to really hone your skills to drive one of these logs down the river, man, I don't know how people would have started that job. You really would have been literally thrown in the deep end. It would have been a sink or swim situation. But no, the entire video was honestly so well animated, especially for the time. I mean, it's obviously very limited frames, but there were more than I expected. There plenty of color, plenty of even just storyline involving the entire thing, from the woman that wants to get married and she knows what she wants, and what she wants is this man right here. You know, there are plenty of other log drivers, but he just has the perfect technique, the power, the balance, the barreling down the river. All of it just combines into just being her perfect man. And honestly, even though he's without his toque right now, so he's not whole, he very quickly nabs it back just to lock those logs back into their original position. And so I can absolutely understand how and why this would be heralded as such a Canadian classic. I mean, it does make me wonder where people were originally watching it. Was it just an advertisement on TV, or it doesn't really advertise anything, and so is it just Canada advertising Canada? Because I mean, even the fact that they throw the Canadian stereotypes in there between the beaver and the moose and even the toque, all of it is wrapped up into a nice neat little package that truly is just such a time capsule, you know, really just hollering back to Canada's roots. And so, oh, I'm glad I watched that. From the animation style to the story, I love it. The entire thing is brilliant.
I'd like you to meet Bill Miner, famous train robber. He was the first bandit to say hands up. In 1906, though, things went wrong. Yeah, just east of Kamloops, the Imperial Limited headed for Vancouver. Hands up, says Miner and his friends to the engineer. Take the engine and that car up the track. They took the wrong car. This was the baggage car, not the express car. All they could find was some liver pills. Soon after, a police posse took after them. "Who are you?" the sergeant asks. "Prospector," says Bill Miner. But one of his friends panicked. "Get out, boys," he says. "It's all up." The police found a gun and a bottle of liver pills. "Hands up," says the sergeant. "Hands up."
Oh, that poor guy. I mean, I guess he isn't that poor because he was just robbing trains, but really the entire story, it's such a little folklore. I love the fact that they're just focusing on all these little stories that you don't really hear about. I mean, why would you hear about it? It's just from 1906, a single train or multiple trains on a single line, but a single guy, no one really got injured. He was just robbing trains, and the entire thing got turned into a vignette. I mean, I guess in a way it isn't too dissimilar to the stories that we hear about Ned Kelly. I mean, from what I'm gathering here, Ned Kelly was a bit of a bigger name and certainly went out with a bit of a bigger bang than this guy did, considering this guy just got thrown under the bus by his own friend. And I guess that does now make me wonder what ended up happening to him, because they only really ever caught him with one bottle of pills and one gun, and so unless they just found him guilty for all the other train robberies at the same time with no evidence of it, which considering it's 1909, maybe they didn't exactly have to, they just connected the dots. I would really like to know what happened to him, because I can't imagine he had the happiest of endings, speaking of Ned Kelly in a way. And to be fair to him, he certainly did seem to have some level of brains about him. I mean, even just executing on the plan to rob a train, I can't imagine is the easiest thing in the world, but then also just going, no, we are a prospector, or I'm a prospector, and I have the last name Miner. They really go hand in hand there, and so regardless, I do think that this is a fantastic way just to peer into the past, and of course, Heritage Minutes will always have its place there, but I also think that Canadian Vignettes is just a fantastic way, from the hand-drawn elements and the animation style to even just the story selection, you know. Let's say this was animated in 1940, Bill Miner is still making the news 30 years after he did it, and so the entire thing has just got me hooked. I'll have to check more of these out because they are very, very cool.